I'm very sad that we have to be here today for why we're here today. Before we begin on what I had planned on talking about, I think it's very important that we recognize the life of one of our citizens, David McAtee, who died last night in an altercation with the Louisville Metro Police Department. My prayers, our thoughts go out to his family and the community that loved him very much. We call on Mayor Fisher to put any and all resources necessary into the Public Integrity Unit in order to complete the case of Breonna Taylor. The fact that Breonna Taylor tragically lost her life in our community on March the 13th, and here we are, June the 1st, and that case has not been completed yet, is unacceptable. We call on it to be completed by Friday of this week with all the resources needed to get it completed. The mayor has that power to do it. He has the power to direct resources there, and we demand that that take place. That way it can be turned over to the Attorney General so he can begin the review of the case. Without the entire case, the Attorney General cannot begin. It's very simple. The next step is Metro Council is going to, creating a permanent committee, additional committee of Metro Council, an equity and inclusion committee for the council to look at all of our policies within Metro government, including the police department, on how we do or do not include race and inclusion in all of our policies that we do. Unintended consequences and sometimes intended consequences need to be eliminated. Second, I've directed the county attorney's office to start work on legislation that would make 911 audio tapes, Metro call logs, Louisville Metro body cameras, all subject to open records regardless of if LMPD or the administration has an ongoing investigation. I've also directed and asked the county attorney's office to create legislation that all sworn personnel that work for Metro government, if they are involved in a critical incident, they will undergo an immediate urinalysis and drug analysis post-incident. We also, as you know, have legislation to deal with no-knock warrants. I know that you all have seen the legislation. I was just informed as I was pulling in today that that language has been changed, and I just want to read it to you so that you're clear on what it is from what you've seen online. The language has been changed to no-knock warrants may only be sought in cases involving imminent threat of harm or death to law enforcement personnel or civilians, which shall be limited to the following offenses: murder, hostage-taking, kidnapping, terrorism, human trafficking, and sexual trafficking. That language is subject to be changed once it gets to committee. But we as Metro Council feel very strongly that changes need to be made. I congratulate the mayor as I was pulling in to this building today. I learned that we have a new chief of police, and his name is Rob Schroeder, and that Chief Conrad has been removed. I am saddened that it took this much calamity in our city to remove the chief of police. Our community is in an uproar right now because of many, many things. A lot of us get focused on the police department and what did or didn't happen with the police department, but it's something related to a much, much deeper thing. It's related to equity, so that all people are treated equal in our city, in our state, and in our country. You see protests going on all over our country because of this issue. So with that being said, I will stop with my statements, and next I'll call upon Kevin KRAMER, who's in leadership of the Metro Council.
Thank you, President James. I guess the first thing I would want to say is my heart goes out to the family of David. I understand that he was quite supportive of the community. This is obviously a very unfortunate turn of events. I think what all of us would call for is transparency. We want to know what happened. The public has a right to know what happened. In the past, there have been occasions in Louisville where police have been involved and we have waited months and months to find out what had happened. And in that waiting, I think very often folks begin to question the validity of the answers that finally do come out. And so I think this evening, along with the changes that President James has mentioned, we are calling on the mayor to, as quickly as possible, get to the bottom of this and to release accurate information. We're not interested in hearsay. We're not interested in, this is what we think happened, so we're not asking him to make snap judgments in the next 10 minutes. But waiting 2.5 and 3 months for information with Breonna Taylor's case, waiting the months and months that we waited with other scandals that Metro Louisville's had to deal with, it is clear that the waiting is creating in many of us a feeling that what we're getting is not necessarily the truth. And I think the first thing, the most important thing, is we've got to get to the truth. That's the only way we begin to deal with the iniquities that the president is talking about. And so that's what we're calling for. We recognize that we're the legislative body and not the executive one. We are not out here making statements or claims or telling you what the police department is going to do. We're telling you that as a council, these are the things that are in our purview, and these are the kinds of things that we're going to make sure happen. At that, I'll turn it over to Councilman Fox.
Thank you, Councilman KRAMER. I'm Mark Fox, M-A-R-K-F-O-X. I represent District 13, which is in South Louisville. I'd like to speak directly to the community and just let you know, as your elected representative, Councilman KRAMER said we're not the executive branch, we're the legislative branch. That is true. That is the people's house in federal government, and that is the people's house in state government, and that is the people's house in local government. Over the last several weeks, I've received well over 2,000 emails, voicemails, contacts at Kroger, folks running into me at the mall. And I want you to know, Louisville, your voice is being heard. We hear you, and the wheels are in motion. As President James illustrated, the wheels are in motion with the legislation that is already in the chute to deal with these no-knock warrants. I personally, and most of you know my background, I was a police officer for over 30 years. I personally don't see the value in seizing narcotic evidence via a no-knock warrant. It's just not worth the risk. It's not worth the risk to our citizens. It's not worth the risk to our police officers doing it. And speaking to our police officers doing it, we also need to address lawlessness when it occurs. Peaceful protest is what this country was founded upon. Peaceful protests are welcome. I've been a part of them, and I've been listening to them. But when that crosses the line to criminal behavior, we depend on the men and women of our police department to protect life and property, our stores, and we need to address that. And to our police officers, I could see on television, they're worn out. They're worn out. And I'm worried about the 90+% of men and women of that agency that are the best people in the world. They're your neighbors. They're your husbands, they're your wives, they're your PTA members. Police officers in this community are a part of the community. When things get off the rails to the level they have recently, you bring in the National Guard, they're citizen soldiers from other parts around this Commonwealth. Same with the state police. They work around this Commonwealth. The LMPD, the men and women that work there, have their finger on the pulse of this community every day. Are there mistakes made? Absolutely there are. Are they going to be dealt with? We're standing here to tell you, yeah, they will. But we largely have a great workforce that I was proud to be a part of for over 30 years. 90% of the folks that I worked with were doing the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons. We, as a community, need to know, let them know that they have our support as a collective community. The problems we're dealing with occurred over a period of over 200 years plus. And they're not going to be solved in one day. They're not going to be solved with one press conference. And they're not going to be solved with one piece of legislation. But if we're going to solve them, we're going to have to solve them together, arm in arm, as the great community that we are. Louisville, we're listening, and we're working to make things better. Thank you for your time and attention. Councilman Reed.
Thank you, Councilman Fox. I'm Scott Reed, and I represent the 16th District, Metro Louisville. I was very happy to hear that finally the mayor has announced replacement of the police chief, and maybe this can be the start of healing. This body 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago, voted no confidence in the police chief, and maybe this is the start of something really good. So I will say this, I'm not going to take too much time, that I understand, fully understand that systemic change needs to be made. I understand the frustration among people, I understand the hurt. However, looting, vandalizing, destroying public and private property, that does nothing to accomplish the goal. That just divides us even more, and we need to come together as a community right now. So this body is listening to you, whoever's out watching, we understand, and hopefully today will be the start of something that's ongoing and positive change moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I share borderline boundaries with another council person, and that is District number 5. District number 5 council person is DONNA PURVIS, and we share where the shooting took place last night. And I call for Councilman Purvis to please come forward.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start out by saying that I would like to express my condolences still to the family of Breonna Taylor and to our recent victim, Mr. McAtee. It's very unfortunate that this is happening again. I share with my colleagues and the council in revising policy and procedure to offer better protection for our citizens. But I'm going to go a step further and say that the community waited too long to get the evidence and the facts leading to Breonna Taylor's murder. I don't want us to wait another 3 months to tell us why did we lose another life. I don't understand it. And plain and simple, I think the community is tired of being played with, and this is stirring up emotions, and there is something that we have to do. I would like to know, I would like to get a release from the 911 call from last evening this morning, calling out the police. I'd like to know whose decision was it to send both the police and the National Guard. I need these answers, the community needs these answers. I'm not asking for them, I'm demanding these answers. We owe people answers as to why did we lose another life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And the next is the Director of our Public Safety Committee. There she is, Councilwoman Jessica Green.
I've had a pit in my stomach for the last few weeks. And I've seen people on social media say, I can't breathe. And I've honestly struggled with the idea of us in Louisville and us around the country. Things have come to a boiling point. It's gotten to the point where we are in such distress and we are trying to put the pieces back together again. Many of you have heard me talk about my son. He's here with me. He's 11 years old, and the only thing that he wants to be is an LMPD detective. Who would have thought that a kid who was born 11 years ago would have had to be basically living through the new civil rights era? And so in the last few weeks, he and I have sat down. We watched the video of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia together, and he asked me, why? We've talked about Breonna Taylor. And then today on the ride out here, I had to tell him that the barbecue man that our family goes to at 26 and Broadway to get rib tips, and that we've gone to almost for his entire life, that he had been killed. And so he asked me why. And I don't know the answer to any of it, but I know that it weighs so heavily on my soul. And I'm so glad that at this point we have allies who are standing with us, because there is a great weight that Black America carries on our shoulders to try to fix the problems all by ourselves. They look to the people who have been oppressed and downtrodden to try to fix this situation. And we cannot fix it by ourselves. It takes people from all across the city. It takes white allies speaking up and saying enough is enough, because we're just tired. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next is our co-chair of the Civilian Oversight Committee, looking at civilian review and Inspector General and civilian oversight of our police department, Councilwoman PAULA McCraney.
Thank you. Our community is hurting. Our nation is hurting. African Americans, Black people, American descendants from slavery are hurting. We have to understand that enough is enough, and the time is ripe for us to get things right. I stand here June 1st on Statehood Day. Statehood Day is celebrated in Kentucky and in Tennessee as a celebration of the Constitution of the United States and the First Amendment right to protest. On this day, we stand before you to talk about the inequities in this society and the fact that so many people are being killed, particularly Black people, because they are trying to express themselves because of the inequities within our society. I received an email. That email was from one of my constituents, and that email asked me, please help me. I don't understand. What do Black people want? We have given them more than perhaps I have received, the email went on to say. What is it, and why can't they do better? This is the society we live in. These questions are still permeating through the minds of white people. And if those are the type of emails that I have to answer, then you better believe, as the co-chair of the Civilian Review Board, I will do everything in my power to make sure that police are no longer policing police alone. We have to do things better. We have to get things right. And it starts with each individual doing their part and making sure that policies, procedures, laws, ordinances are changed so that it affects the people equitably. We can no longer stand by the wayside and watch our people suffer. Enough is enough. And I also had a conversation today with the white gentleman. This gentleman proceeded to tell me what the laws were at the state level that would prohibit the civilian review board from moving forward, from having any type of powers to make any change to the police citizens review board. I said to him, why are you telling me about the limitations? Because I'm not here to hear about what we can't do. I'm here to look at what we can do and let this particular work group have the pie in the sky ideas. Then it's up to us to work hard as a council and as the county attorney's office to make sure whatever this work group says we need for our community to heal, to get better, and to police properly the police, then we need to figure out a way to make it work, not figure out what is prohibiting us from making it work. I stand ready, and when I was asked to co-chair this particular work group, that told me that Louisville is ready for change because I'm no nonsense and I'm ready to make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next is Councilwoman Keisha Dorsey.
Thank you, President James. I stand before you today as Councilwoman District 3, but if you allow me to go off script a little bit, typically we've been labeled angry. Today we are. I was searching for guidance amongst history because history repeats itself when we don't get it right. So I found my way to a little document called the KRAMER report, and you can look it up. In 1967, a national committee was put together to understand the racial riots that broke out. The report was completed in '68, and I just want to highlight a few things from that report that simply talk about what Black people want. It simply says, segregation and poverty have created in the racial ghettos a destructive environment totally unknown to white America. What white Americans have never fully understood, and what this report it says Negro, but what the African American can never forget is that white society is deeply implicated in the ghettos. White institutions have created it, and white institutions maintain it, and white society condones it. It's a struggle to deal with, but really what this report is saying is that racism is real. And this report goes on to say we have two Americas, one white and one Black. But in this report, it says we still have time to rectify what's going on. And it lays out a strategic plan that I don't understand why we have yet to implement. And number one, it talks about the first level of intensity. Number one is police practices. This is from 1968. It lays out police practices, underemployment and unemployment, inadequate housing, inadequate education, poor recreation facilities and programs, Cindy, while we're fighting to keep pools open. Ineffectiveness in political structure and grievances mechanisms, Councilwoman, what you're fighting for. Disrespectful attitudes, discriminatory practices within the justice system, inadequacy of federal programs and municipal services, discriminatory consumer and credit practices, and welfare and inadequate programs. If you want to know why we're angry, it's been out there. We're just fighting for change. It didn't start with Breonna, but what we're saying is it ends with Breonna. We are tired. And if I'm labeled angry, then so be it. But this council is uniting together to enact the change that we should have seen, that my mother should have seen, that my grandmother should have seen. We're tired. But luckily, we have allies that are ready to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next up, I'll call on Councilwoman Nicole George.
Thank you, President, and I'm honored to be here today as an ally, standing beside my colleagues, looking forward to create systemic change. With that, I'm going to say, more importantly, I'm here today to listen. And I'm going to encourage lots of us throughout this time period to really take a moment and listen, because it's something that we haven't done enough of and something that needs to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman David Yates.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand here today with my colleagues from 26 different council districts from all across Jefferson County, from Metro Louisville, every one of us united. United for a cause, united for change, listening, and moving forward together. We're representative of Metro Louisville. I look around. My colleagues from state government, they're here with us. Our representatives, senator, together, and move forward. I look in a room, I've stood side by side, I have cried with you, I've worked with you, we've worked together to make a difference. We can make a change, and we can do it together. And for all those listening, this is your legislative body, this is your voice. Contact us. The table's open to sit down and discuss, and that's the next move. The entire council working together for real change. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for inviting us today. I'm honored to stand with all of you. And please know that as your representatives in state government, we stand to listen to what changes you need in state law. We want to work together to build a Louisville that we can all be proud of. And that means people who look like me need to shut up a little bit more and listen a whole lot more. I think we've known that problems have simmered for many, many years, maybe 200 years. And I like what you said. It ends here, and we start moving forward. And that means we listen a lot. We listen to conversations that are hard to listen to, conversations that talk about despair and anger, but we move forward together. And thank you so much for including us.
And I'll echo the comments of Leader Jenkins. Thank everyone for standing up, because it is time for a change. It's time for us to listen. It's time for us to work together, and through listening, have that meaningful change that we can bring about through legislation, bring about for the betterment of our community. We call today not only for that change and for that meaningful inclusion, not for appeasement, but for purpose. We can make a difference and be a model not just for the state of Kentucky, but for the nation as a whole. And calling for that change, know that we are hearing you. We are seeing you. We will be with you. But we also ask and echo the calls for peace. Protest is important to have our voices heard. That protest does need to be peaceful so that we can all move forward together. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm probably one of the oldest council people around here. It's several of us that's been there since day one. And I've never seen anything like this before. And as I was sitting there and I looked at my phone, and it came up that the mayor has fired the chief. And I just couldn't imagine what took him so long. All the things that have happened since I've been there, since he's been there. And we've begged, we've done everything. And finally, after all of this, taking to tear up the city and everything else, he finally made a decision. So I'm hurt when I look at my community. I'm hurt when I see all my other friends and people hurting. Businesses are destroyed. And this is something that the whole time I've been there, I've never seen anything like it. One crisis after another.
We're going to feed our community. We need our community to feed us. You're feeding us with your messages. You're feeding us with your phone calls. You're feeding us with your demands for action. We are taking action. And if there's a void from other people, we'll fill that void. And we will continue to take action. We're going to work together with the community. We're going to work together as a diverse group of passionate people that are all tired and join in our community with being tired of where we are and what we've become. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
The final part of the action I want to talk about today is I'm directing the Government Accountability Committee to investigate and have hearings on why last night at 8:15, when people were peacefully protesting in Jefferson Square, why the administration decided that was the time to tear gas people while they were peacefully assembled in the park. I do not have an answer. The answer that I received from the administration last night doesn't seem adequate. And then I need to know, I'm asking the Government Accountability Committee to find out how, when we used the National Guard, we were told they would be used to protect critical assets in our community. And then I find out this morning that my friend is dead because of actions taken by the police department. So we need to know why. We all need to know why. What happened and why it happened. Where was the breakdown? How did the National Guard end up being in West Louisville? Why was there such a massive police response to the corner 26th and Broadway? And why is my friend dead?